Hey everybody, it's Patrick and it's after work, and I haven't done one of these in a long time, so sorry to the two or three people that were waiting with bated breath for me to make another video. I apologize. Man, I think it's been like a year or so. I'm almost done with my bachelor's degree course of study, so yeah, I think it has been quite a while. May 19th, I walk down the aisle and get a bachelor's in nursing science. After which, of course, I will jump right into the accelerated master's degree program, which should be kind of fun. I just saw my housemate over there just walking by. So I'm tootling around in my hometown. I think I've just finished my last visit of the day, but I'm going to call and check up on a couple of people and just see how they're doing. Finally feel like I've kind of hit my stride as a case manager. I feel like I'm a little more on top of things, and the class that I took previously on nursing case management, while it didn't really tell me anything new about how to do the job, it did kind of put my work into a broader context for me about how case management fits into the rest of the healthcare system by reading various articles and whatnot. And then the class that I'm taking now, that's 2 weeks away from being done, my very last class as a bachelor's student, is on public health, which has been really fascinating so far. I'm being preceptored by the public health nurse from the neighboring public health district, which has been really fun. I've done some blood pressure screenings at, one of the first things I did was a blood pressure screening at an English as a second language class, because the town in particular has a lot of immigrants from Haiti and from China and from other places because of the casinos. This is where the big casinos are. So after watching the professionals who were there, to do the wellness van stuff, run into some stumbling blocks communicating with people who are not native speakers, because they're at an English as a second language class, so obviously they don't speak English very well, although some of them did. But a lot of them would just say yes to everything and not kind of like questioning whether or not they understood the question. So after a couple of rounds of this, I pulled out my smartphone, the same thing I'm recording this video on right now, and loaded up a copy of Google Translate and showed the audible translation feature, and I was happy to find out that it's totally changed the way a couple of people practice public health in this region, where like for example, somebody who speaks Chinese and they need to work with them about investigating a lead poisoning and arranging to come over to their house with sanitary workers and things like that. And it's the kind of thing where if you don't have a technological method for doing it, you have to spend a lot of money on a telephone translation service, and those things aren't cheap. Human translation, a professional human translator, I'm sure is the gold standard, and I can think of a lot of scenarios where you would want a professional human translator. But for a lot of this routine stuff where you don't have the budget or the support to get those translations done, the smartphone does a really good job. And it also had Haitian Creole in it, and because I discovered during the wellness van exercise that my minimal French language skills are not sufficient to converse with somebody who speaks Haitian Creole, because it's a different language. So that was kind of fun for me to see that I brought something to my clinical experience that actually enriched the practice of professional public health nurses. So that was a good feeling. And then, let's see, what else did I do? I did training for mass dispensing with the Medical Reserve Corps. And the MRC is an interesting thing that you can Google if you're looking for something to do to volunteer your time. But it was, this kind of thing where they train for if there's some big widespread biological disaster, like widespread anthrax or something like that. There's emergency plans in place to mass dispense antibiotics to the population in a way that is as safe as possible, but also kind of throws out the window some of the usual rules about prescribing and dispensing. And something I learned during that process is that part of our emergency plan is an emergency team of massage therapists to treat the volunteers. Ooh, ambulance behind me. Hang on a second. And the emergency massage therapists were there with their vests on that said emergency LMT team or something like that. So I got a kick out of that. That was quite a lot of fun. And then this week I'm going to be meeting with my preceptor to go over some public health data that was collected by the hospital system local to that area. That was like super in-depth. I was amazed at how in-depth it was, and I was also amazed at how difficult it was to find the information on my own. I had to get a public health nurse to forward it to me. But it was very, very in-depth. It was, demographics, age breakdowns, what percentage of the population drives cars, visits a doctor, has health insurance. All of that stuff was all laid out in this really detailed report. So I'm looking forward to going over that in more detail. And then I think the thing that stuck with me the most about this class so far is the fact that lead poisoning is still a big problem. And I just find that mind-boggling that in this day and age we would be having a problem with lead poisoning still. And I got to meet with a state epidemiologist, in the course of doing that, which was really interesting. And she was telling me that, a big part of the problem with lead poisonings in our area is that doctors, like private pediatricians and private doctors and family doctors and stuff, do not always test for lead and zinc protoporphyrin in the way that is actually mandated by our state government, which was kind of mind-blowing for me to hear that there's already a policy in place and the standard testing is mandated by law, but it's not getting done. There don't seem to be many consequences for physicians unless something really egregious happens. Of course, there's no appropriate lead blood level. The appropriate lead blood level is 0. So, we saw a map that showed the distribution of compliance rates across our state, county by county, and interestingly enough, compliance rates were better in high population density areas, and the explanation I was given for this was that in higher population density areas, there's more reliance on government subsidy to provide health care, so things are more tightly controlled. And then, out in the rural areas, things are a little looser and things aren't regulated as tightly. So, in some of the rural areas of our state, there's only 30-40% compliance with state-mandated lead testing, which isn't just testing for lead once. At certain levels of lead in the blood, you're supposed to do follow-up tests, more rapidly the higher the blood level was, because it's critical to, find out if the level is going up or down, and then to step in right away, if it's going up because somebody's being re-exposed. And then the zinc protoporphyrin levels are something that apparently a lot of MDs are not educated about, but it's important to test in cases of lead poisoning because the ZPP level will tell you whether the fluctuations in whether elevations in lead levels are caused by lead leaching out of the bone, or if the raise in lead level is caused by re-exposure, which is important to know for investigating the lead poisoning and seeing why it happened. So for my my last project is going to be which is due this weekend also, is going to be teaching PowerPoint, like an educational exercise where I pretend I'm delivering a presentation to physicians in the area, educating them about what the state of Connecticut requires of them in terms of testing for lead. And I guess this is an activity that public health nurses do. My preceptor called it a lunch and learn, where you take people out to lunch and you educate them about something. That sounds kind of like fun. And so, the more that I've been learning about public health, the more I've been interested in it as a possible career. I need to learn more about it first, about the actual work of public health nursing and how they're compensated and stuff. But I'm learning about some of those things from my preceptor. But my preceptor is really cool. She used to be an emergency nurse, which was what I wanted to do when I was in school. And then she said she liked public health nursing because, like emergency nursing, you get pulled in a bunch of different directions and you have to think on your feet and improvise. And that was what really appealed to me about emergency nursing. And so since I still haven't gotten my year in med-surg in, maybe it's more likely that I'll get into public health than into emergency. Although at my last party, or maybe it was 2 parties ago, one of my friends who just got licensed told me about this really cool sounding job, but it's only part-time, so I can't leave full-time work for it. But it's these 8 beds nestled in the back of the emergency room where they stick people that are having crises and they don't know what to do about them. It's mainly people who are waiting for a social worker to see them the next day, but it's where you get your runaways, your drug freakouts, your psychotic breaks, things like that. It's like the crisis, what do they call it? The crisis response unit or something like that. But it appeals to me on a lot of different levels. For one thing, they haven't been able to fill this position for a year. Like, other people are taking turns doing it, but everybody else is afraid to do it. I guess because it involves crisis response. Crisis response itself is something that I'm interested in learning about because I borrowed from my mentors while I was in school this book on post-critical incident stress debriefing and another one on sexual assault nurse examination. And those are, both things I'm interested in learning more about. But it also seemed to be the way that other people's descriptions of it were described to me. It seems like an area, a milieu, if you will, where patients are at a high to moderate risk of being neglected by their caregivers because it's such an unwanted assignment. And just like my interest in psych nursing, for those similar reasons, I'm interested in learning a little more about that. But it's only a part-time position, and I'm paying a mortgage and stuff, and it's on nights. So I couldn't really do that in my full-time job because I don't think it's really responsible of me to, work 11 to 7 and then 8 to 4. I'm not that hard up. I'm making my payments on time and stuff. Maybe on call somewhere. Maybe I can do like on call and work during the day, but even that's pretty iffy. If it was one of those on-call jobs where I wouldn't have to actually go out, I just talk to people on the phone, that would be fair enough. But I'm happy to be back at work. I took some days off, and then I'm taking another week or so of vacation for my birthday next month, which will then be followed by what promises to be an epic party. Now that I'm a single homeowner, parties are like my thing that I look forward to the most. I had a really old friend of mine come and move in with me. This guy that I've known for a decade and a half, really good friend of mine, and he's living with me for free in exchange for help getting the house painted and doing some handy stuff around the house, which I'm like totally inept at. So that's kind of fun. What else is going on? Let's see. Oh yeah, I got the core course coming up soon. I think it's just next week. I'm going to be doing my twice annual lecture on pain and symptom management for a group of hospital nurses, who I'm really looking forward to. Well, maybe I can get some video of it again. They video recorded the one 2 sessions ago, but they didn't do the last one. But this is going to be our biggest turnout ever, 42 nurses, so it's going to be packed, and it's going to be specifically nurses too. Got to make sure I'm on my game. I got my PowerPoint mostly made up, but I looked at the evaluative criteria, and it's a little stricter than the other hospitals' evaluative criteria, which I think is good because in the interest of time, I was asked to cut out a lot of my lecture, but now that they're adding in some specific things that I was asked to cut out, I get to put them back in, and specifically detailed info on the physiology of pain and specific information about the consequences of untreated pain, which I thought were an interesting thing to put in, but I was told it was too lengthy, and then we were always going over and all this stuff, but I think I've got it streamlined pretty good now. I should just be able to whip through it, get to the case studies at the end, because that's my favorite part, and I think that's everybody else's favorite part too. And yeah, so that should be fun. I was asked briefly to do more of the in-services at some of the nursing homes, but my perception of it was I was just doing that when the person who usually does it, our clinical outreach person, when she's ill or can't make an appointment, then I help her out by doing it. Because doing them regularly with a full caseload is just too much. I really like doing them, but it's something that they should really send somebody who doesn't have the demands of a caseload to worry about at the same time as that they're doing clinical outreach activities. And whenever I think about that, it always calls forth the broader question of how do you find time to what's the word professional development? Where do you find time in the workday for professional development? It seems like facilities and any other kind of agencies are hesitant to provide time on the clock for training. Fortunately, my agency is really good about that, and we have time set up regularly in our weeks for professional development. But it's still, kind of tight and shoehorned in there. It's still something that in the back of our mind, a lot of us are thinking, I hope this gets over so I can, accomplish this task, or I wish I could, just call this person right now and figure out what's going on. So it's hard to work in because, while we're doing those trainings, there aren't other nurses covering all of our caseloads. It's still us. There's people that help out, but not enough when everybody is in training. So it seems like it's a problem without an easy solution because it's not feasible to hire, an entire duplicate staff, to cover while one half of the staff is in training. And then if you split the staff up half and half, then everything gets complicated, and then the total amount of time spent in training starts expanding, per person. And I tend to think, like I always do, there's some kind of information technology solution to this, but I can't tell you off the top of the head what it would be. I got a new laptop. That's kind of fun. My laptop finally broke. I had one of those little Asus netbooks, and I dropped it one too many times. I put it on the floor, and then I crushed it with the leg of a chair, and it destroyed the Wi-Fi antenna, and then the battery stopped working. So it was time. I had that little $300 netbook for 2 years, and now I find that they don't make them anymore, which is really too bad. So I got a gaming laptop instead with a 14, 15-inch screen. And I love having more screen real estate, and it's a performance machine. It runs so much better. It's a little bit bigger and bulkier, but I can deal with that. That's not a big deal. And then we've also got standard dress now. You might see that my uniform is different. We're all wearing uniforms now, which is something in principle that I'm generally opposed to, but I really like how it's worked out at this agency because in pretty much for my whole career in nursing, I always wear solid colored scrubs because of research that indicates solid colored scrubs improves the perception of the patients more so than print scrubs or t-shirt scrub tops. Particularly in patient perception of competence and caring, solid colored scrubs always score the highest. After the workday, I would just continue to wear my scrubs because I didn't see the point in changing out of them to do, twice as much laundry. But now that I have standard dress that's got a company logo on it, I'm not going to, go around the rest of my day wearing a logo. So that kind of has forced me to change my clothes at the end of every workday, which I think I should have been doing that all along for, my mental health, changing hats, except I don't wear a hat. I'm changing everything else, but I think it's really helped me step out of the nursing role when I'm not at work, which I think has been really good for me. Well, I'm almost home, so I think I'll cut it off there. That was a good 20 minutes or so, and I hope it has been nice for you to hear from me, and feel free to leave me comments, love letters and all that good stuff, because I surely appreciate it. And I'll see you when I see you.